I'm Matthew Kurbis, the subscription attorney, and this is Law Subscribed, your dedicated source for all things subscriptions and the law. After 4 years of teaching lawyers how to ditch billing time for subscriptions and practicing what I preach as a law firm owner, I started a legal tech company called Practi to make it easier for firms to trade billing time for predictable revenue. It's free to create an account, customize subscription packages, and sign up your first subscribing client at Practi.ai. Thank you to my sponsors. See links to them in the show notes. Everything discussed is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Enjoy the show. All right. Okay, we're live. I have with me today on the next episode of Law Subscribed Live, I think this is my third one this week, crazy, JP Mohler of General Legal, an AI native law firm that's backed by Y Combinator. What is this? JP, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Matthew. I'm excited to be here.
Well, just in case folks haven't seen the news or your prolific LinkedIn commenting and posting, of which I'm appearing in all the comments, the algorithm has figured me out. If anyone posts about AI and business model of law, even if I'm not connected to those people, I have those in my feed now. But just in case my audience hasn't seen that yet, give them your background, please.
Sure. So my background, I was a software engineer back in 2015, 2016 out of college. I went to Harvard Law, worked in big law at WilmerHale and Cooley as a corporate associate. And while I was in law school, founded the Harvard Law and Technology Society, was really obsessed with legal tech, hosted a bunch of hackathons. It wasn't as exciting, I think, to the students then, but it's really that organization and legal tech in general, I think, has taken off since. After a few years in big law, I joined the team at Casetext just as they were selling to Thomson Reuters as an AI engineer. I was hired by my now co-founder, Ved, who's our CTO and who's the head of AI at Casetext, and worked closely as well with Pablo Arredondo, who's the co-founder of Casetext, and for the last 2 years worked on a special projects team inside Thomson Reuters, working with judges, prosecutors, and big law attorneys to generate cutting edge prototypes of what AI can do in practice. And then a month and a half ago, I left Thomson Reuters along with Casetext's longtime CTO, Ryan Walker, and Javed, and we started General Legal. And General Legal is an AI native law firm for commercial contracts. And we're in Y Combinator right now. Yeah.
So was Matthew Stubenberg, is that his name, there at Harvard doing the tech lab when you were there? I don't know if that rings a bell, Matthew.
So are you talking about the Library Innovation Lab?
Oh, it might have been that. There was somebody who was there who I did some work with in the ABA years ago.
So let's see. It was Adam Ziegler was running operations there.
Oh,
and then
okay.
There were some professors who had a significant role in legal tech there. John Zittrain was one of them. Lou Lessig kind of is always nibbling around the edges of legal technology as well.
Oh, it was A to J Lab. That's why. It was Matthew Stubenberg was the associate director of legal tech, but as part of the A to J Lab. So I don't know if you guys crossed paths.
Yes, I did. Not only did we cross paths, but we co-hosted a hackathon with Matthew running it at A to J Lab. And then Jim Greiner, who's actually my 1L mentor, was the head of A to J, and I believe he had hired Matthew. Matthew was great and was incredibly excited. At the time, he was playing around with virtual reality legal tech applications, 2017, 2018, really into AI. That hackathon was actually, I think, an AI ML oriented hackathon. So yeah, he was great.
Yeah, I mean, I just pulled up, so I got to have him on the podcast because I just pulled up. We were emailing about using AI to streamline legal flowcharts back in June of 2020, Matthew and I.
Incredible. That's awesome.
But so he though is really cutting edge, like trying to pay attention to all that stuff. So it's really cool to see, that you guys cross paths. Okay, so you mentioned big law. Did you have to bill by the hour?
Absolutely. Who doesn't? So yeah, I think my record, and there are folks in big law who can blow this out of the water, but I think my record was in 1 month, I once billed 280 hours. But yeah, there were times in my big law career where I was billing every day. There were times where I was lazier and billing every week. And there were a couple times where I think I only billed at the end of the month using kind of notes. I think I might have even missed a deadline once to get all of my hours in. It was certainly for most folks who are kind of more engineering oriented, that side of the brain, I think billing by the hour is very, very painful. It's not something you want to be spending a lot of mental energy on, especially if you've just spent a 15-hour day delivering very high quality services to your clients.
It is so nonsensical to me as somebody who had to bill hours for years as well, that like you take expert problem solvers, right? And of course, software engineering is a different kind of problem solving, right? And you're like, okay, and you're just going to track time. Like this is what you're going to read that. This is what you have to do, right? Whereas we could try to find the efficiencies and try to find the improvements and how could we get to end results faster? And even if that might be more valuable, we're disincentivized from doing that because that means less money. And when you're in the cog in the machine and you're at a bigger firm, maybe that's less of a care. I don't know. You tell me. But like even like when you're a solo firm owner or whatever, or smaller firms, and maybe your bottom line or your bonus. Well, no, that's not true because your bonus is tied to your hours, right? So it's like even at the larger firms, like there's this lack of incentive to kick in your maximum problem solving brain to get stuff done faster, more valuably for the client, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's the Warren Buffett line. Show me the incentives and I will show you the behavior, right? The incentives are not necessarily aligned to efficiency at
Mm-hmm.
most law firms as long as they're not providing fixed fee payment structure. And I think that's what you get is you don't get lawyers who are being purposely inefficient, but you do not have massive investment in efficiency and in operationally streamlining the services.
Hence, an AI native law firm that has all the right incentives aligned, right? I mean, was that part of the impetus?
I think it was the entire impetus. I think it was, hey, we want legal services to look a lot more like a SaaS company that can very quickly provide you exactly what you need and allow you to get on with your life as a founder of a company or as the head of legal, at an enterprise, no matter where you are in the legal stack. We want you to be able to enjoy great legal services that are delivered quickly at a reasonable price and then that give you confidence in your contracts and your deals and allow you to focus on what actually matters, which is your business, not your contracts.
Yeah, yeah, and so I've been hosting Law Subscribed for over 4 years, and I've interviewed. I mean, I've had almost 200 podcast episodes, but like over 100 lawyers leveraging subscription of some kind, right? And so you say the SaaS model applied to legal, right? Lawyers have been doing it for a while, but it hasn't taken off. Why is the time now, in light of AI, that now is the time for this model to thrive?
So I think that's a great question. I think that the degree to which technology could streamline a lawyer's practice if implemented to the maximum extent 5 years ago was maybe 10, 20, maybe 30%. Like, I think one of the misconceptions with big law, certainly you don't have this misconception, but I think a lot of folks do, is that there is a lot of kind of process inefficiency that folks are purposely taking longer on a deal than they need to. I think there is some basic process inefficiency. Like, for example, I don't think Big Law does a great job at kind of auto staffing matters and making sure that good associates kind of across practice areas are woven into a matter so that you don't have to wait 4 days for that associate to free up and even start a new matter. But I think as of 5, 6 years ago, while law firms weren't maximally utilizing technology, I think if they were, it would be a 10 to 20% efficiency gain. That is no longer the case. There is a massive, massive gap between the efficiency of a law firm that is barely using AI or is dipping its toe in the water and a law firm that is using AI, specifically generative AI, large language models, and specifically the frontier models, the three major private frontier models for every part of their operation. So it's this from client intake to the first draft to before the draft goes out the door, checking for mistakes, to looking at the full client context for potential strategic advice and guidance, to understanding that a client provided a contract that they executed 2 years ago, and we should learn from that and ensure that everything the client wanted protected there is protected here, or else we need to raise that with the client. There's just so much you can do at every point with LLMs. And Sam Altman has even talked about today, there's a ton of LLM overhang a big gap between what LLMs are capable of if implemented, to the maximum extent inside an operation and what they're currently doing. And I think we're trying to close that gap. And I think the gap is a lot more than at the margins, I think, for the first time in modern history.
Yeah, yeah. I think about AI affecting other things like driving too, right? Like driverless cars. I don't know if you've been able to experience a Waymo or FSD or anything, but I've experienced both, right? They're way better drivers than people, right? It's like I'm worried about the people driving the cars than like the AI driving the cars, right? And yet, like, what's holding people back? Well, we'll have to retrofit a lot of old vehicles, and there are startups that are building retrofit technology for the old vehicles, right? So analogizing that to the legal profession, like I've always taken this approach of bottom up, help law firms transition from the old way to the new way, which has been really hard. I've taught hundreds of CLEs. I have a podcast. I had to start a tech company, and like it's really hard to make law firm, to retrofit, an old law firm for the AI native way. But there's no one right way to disrupt the legal profession. So why come at this from an AI native firm perspective, and what does AI native even mean?
Yeah. So I think the reason I'll answer your first question, the reason that we wanted to start a firm rather than another legal technology company that sells to lawyers is that's what we've been doing, over the last few years. That's what my co-founders have been doing for the better part of the last decade. And I think what they've found is that it is a very gradual process. And it's something that it sounds like you are actually doing a lot to instigate, right? But it's difficult to convince a great lawyer who has been working in a certain way for 40 years, is at the top of their law firm, to entirely change the way they process legal work. They know what works, and there is a ton of hesitance to integrate LLMs, which are really nothing like something they've worked with before. You hear people describe LLMs as an associate or as a paralegal, and I think they're a little different because in some ways they're much better than even a partner at catching errors. They're much better at reading, obviously, lengthy texts near instantly, but they're also much worse in terms of the types of mistakes they make. They're much worse. There's a sycophancy bias with all LLMs. And then they're also worse at just being overconfident in everything that they provide you. So it's a different tool that a lot of lawyers are adopting, I think, more slowly than I would like to see. And so why come at it from an AI native firm perspective? Well, if you start the firm, you get to dictate exactly how your lawyers work. So we are ensuring that our lawyers are using AI at every single corner of the process, and that if they aren't, we're understanding, well, why didn't you? Was a human touch necessary here? We understand that data, we integrate it into our process, and we make the next time that person delivers something to the client 5% more efficient with an AI process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's what AI native means. It's like you're using AI at every point in the process. So like what AI then? Now, I don't need you to give away secret sauce, but are you using some off-the-shelf tools in combination with custom tools? Are you all custom, all off the shelf? Like what are you doing? Like, are you using the Harveys and Lagoras out there?
So we are very much, we don't have a strong buy versus build bias.
Okay.
Our idea is, how do we make our attorneys more efficient? And if buying all of the technology was the way to do that, we would be happy to. The moment we are much more skewed toward build, I don't actually know if that will be the case in the long term. So some of these great legal technology companies have actually been a little hesitant to engage us, and that's understandable. They've been burned in the past with potential legal tech competitors. We aren't competitors to those companies though, and we have in the meantime built a number of internal tools in the kind of initial client engagement category, in the client communication category, in the understanding the context around the specific matter, in the understanding the context around the client in general. We've built those tools primarily, utilizing frontier LLM models.
Okay. I mean, look, I'm as a user of dozens of AI tools, 3 daily, for sure. I like the multi-model tools more than anything else. So I understand you're building on foundational tools, but are you doing the thing where all 3 of them come up and you pick which one is better, or have you built around it in such a way where it's the AI picks the one that's the best thing so you could just get to end result faster?
So we don't have a system where the AI is picking the model, but we as developers are picking the model depending on the particular use case, depending
Mhm.
on, and all three have strengths and weaknesses. And so we also, have relationships with the frontier model developers. So we can nudge them and tell them, you need to focus on X, Y, Z. And they want to hear that, by the way. I mean, that's something I think that they're quite oriented toward in the legal profession, is understanding how to make the foundational models better so that we don't have to prompt on top of them. But to answer your question, yeah, we use all three. I don't think there's any place in our system where the AI does the choosing, but there are a lot of places where we modulate depending on the use case. Yeah.
Now, you said all three, so I guess that doesn't include XAI in the three?
No, I actually didn't do a lot of evals of XAI in the last 2.5 years. I was doing a lot of evals and working even more closely with the frontier developers when I was at Thomson Reuters. I think the three that we see to be the most compelling are, the frontiers of Gemini, Claude, and OpenAI. But yeah, I mean, that's a good question. Listen, like, to our philosophy, we will try anything if we believe it will enhance the lawyer's experience, including XAI. Yeah.
Look, for what it's worth, I know people that love Grok.
Yeah.
I also know people that have sent me things from Grok, and it's just really bad.
Yeah.
As a dominant Gemini user, when I have to use one model, I tend to use Gemini because I'm in Google Workspace, and Notebook LM is actually, I think, the highest value for what you're paying for, like, wrapper around their own tool, right around their own foundational model. But otherwise, I'm all in the multi-model. Paxton's multi-model, Perplexity Pro is my daily driver multi-model, and Sonar and Perplexity will pick which is the best model for me to use. And right now in deep research, it's Claude because it's the best. Right?
Yep.
They didn't used to tell us that, though. That's what's crazy. Claude has gotten so good, the models now, that they have actually taken off that blinder of, like, you don't know what we're using for deep research on Perplexity Pro, but now they're saying, oh, it's Claude. And part of the reason why is they're saying, if you want the better version of Claude, you got to subscribe at $200 a month max to get even the better version.
Yeah.
So I'm all, look, you guys are software people. I get it. You want to be able to pick your models and have fun. But for the lawyers, just let the tool decide for the lawyers which one is best. Don't you think that it could eliminate a bottleneck?
Yeah, I think it's worth looking into. I think, there are, when you build and test a tool internally, and this is actually should be, so Javed is our CTO and is actually like running our and making these decisions and running our technology operation. But, I think in general, when you build a tool internally, you want, and this is something that, publicly, like, Gemini had early issues with, which is you want to ensure consistency and reliability of, like, the category of response.
Right.
So in that way, if you force a model to do a certain thing, right? Like, if you say all of our, word add-in markups are going to be done by Claude because Claude is, never makes mistakes in kind of like returning proper JSON. Claude, is less verbose than OpenAI when it decides how many words to mark up in a paragraph to achieve the same ends. And so if we say, hey, AI, like, we have this paragraph to mark up, should we use, Sonnet 4.6 or, GPT 5.2, and I guess we would have to ask Claude or GPT, we'd have to decide which model is making that modular decision. But I think it would be a little worrisome to have, like, 7 paragraphs marked up by Claude and 3 by GPT 5.2, because you would have an inconsistent, like, tone and approach. So I think you definitely want to keep an eye on all of the models, but it's interesting. I don't think we have truly experimented with like letting the models decide on the models.
Well, see, here's the thing. This is why I don't think legal tech and legal AI is dead, or AI native law firms is dead, because Claude now lets you have legal plugins with their stuff. Because I think the value of being able to use multiple models is the value of any sort of wrapper or AI native law firm that's being able to leverage all these models. Because, like, when Claude gets better, it does legal stuff better. Guess what? The law firm using that, or the AI tool that uses Claude with the other ones, the law firm who's the benefactor of that just gets the update. Right? So, like, I'm not worried about that. I think that was a major, and the whole data of it all, right? When the market tanked, I mean, what's your perspective on, like, did the market get it wrong? No financial advice given on this podcast.
I don't I think that the market was responding, in my opinion, more to Anthropic's interest in legal than it
Mm.
was to the capacity of that particular tool. Because obviously the Claude Legal plugin was a wrapper for Claude Frontier models. As we know, right, working with these models every day, they are still not great at doing like B2B legal work. There are a lot of what I've already discussed, the kind of overzealousness, I think overconfidence, like if you ask Claude, for example, put in a contract and say, the choice of law provision here is Florida, but I live in Texas. Like, does that matter? Claude will give you like 5 paragraphs about the dire differences in like corporate law structure between Florida and Texas,
Right.
because there are differences, but really the differences don't matter. And if you talk to a smart lawyer, they'll tell you that like the UCC is likely to govern virtually all of the provisions here, and you should just not push back on that. We had a client come to us who told us that they used, I can't remember which model it was. They used, I won't call any of them out. They used one frontier model for a pretty significant, this was a small YC AI SaaS company for a pretty significant enterprise.
Well, you can't call them out because they might lose privilege.
Exactly.
So
Right,
don't call them
They
out.
certainly lost privilege. That was square one, right? But then square two is they send this Claude updated contract to the enterprise, and they've marked up such ridiculous provisions. And by the way, this is what would happen in Claude Legal, because the legal plugin, because it is really still just a wrapper around the frontier model,
Yeah.
that the enterprise said, wait a minute, like we need to take a second look at this company, because they sent a legal markup with in totally off market, like wild, like we will not be responsible for any 0x fees, liability cap, I can't remember some of the other ones, no indemnification whatsoever. They took a closer look at the company's technology in general and said, well, maybe their technology is just as half baked as the legal, and they cut off the deal, right? So
Wow.
so certainly aside from privilege, right, which is significant, but if you're trying to close a deal and it's a very important deal for your firm, just be careful about using the frontier models cold.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, I was definitely didn't think we were going to get so technical today, but it's good to get technical. Are you guys using or thinking about using Wolfram Alpha at all to do the math side that the probabilistic models are bad at?
So I don't think we're going to venture. We're gonna. And this is more of a CTO question. So
Sure.
I'll
Sure.
put this. You can have Javid on some other time. But no, yeah, I doubt that we're going to, at least in the short term, venture far out of the frontier models for those sorts of specialized capabilities. Yeah.
So then I just got to tell you then, and for your lawyers, if they need to export anything as like an amortization schedule or anything like that for like a deal, or like, because a lot of these deals have a lot of math, right? And like we know the probabilistic AI models are doing math because they've seen it enough. So like they're able to guess what it is because of that. But I love Perplexity Pro because it integrates with Wolfram Alpha and it's like giving AI a calculator. And I am doing so much math that has been checked by like financial experts, like for like deals. And they're like, oh yeah, this is good. So
Yeah, I mean,
I'm
I
just
think
saying.
that would probably, yeah, that's worth thinking about, especially for like statements of work that do have a lot of kind of like back of the napkin calculations. You have less legalese there than like, we're just trying to outline the business understanding. And if there are mathematical mistakes, it's like you say 4x, some number. And I mean, though, frontier models are getting a lot better at catching math, like basic math issues like that.
Yes, but
Probably
it's
not.
probabilistic, right? Like that's the
Right?
thing. Like,
Yeah.
you know what else Perplexity is really good at? Is it's good at because it does the math stuff. It's really Wolfram Alpha that's good at it, right? And Perplexity's engineering around it is like the dates in contracts that they have to calculate the dates of things because you say 60 days, but you don't necessarily have the contract date in there when you write that 60-day timeline, or like is it an annual renewal, monthly renewal? So I have found that, well, first I'm stripping out client information from a contract. And then after sanitizing it and putting it into Perplexity and getting all the deadlines and dates and using Comet Browser's assistant to schedule them in the calendar, right? Like, I mean, the math
Well,
side of it, I highly
so
recommend.
I mean, I think, to the value of an AI law firm, I think that that's already something that we're beginning to implement. which is we have all these contracts. We're managing the contracts for our clients. And we have clients who sent us like 15, 20 plus contracts over the course of the last 5 weeks. So we really kind of know like the internal mechanisms of this company. And we know when every payment is due. So we can then go out and tell the company, hey, this payment is due. Can you check on it? And maybe in 6 months, we will even have the capacity to send a demand letter, and we'll have a lawyer in that state who can go and file on behalf of the client. So we're essentially like there are a number of buttons you can click to receive legal services without having to go out and engage a separate firm.
Oh, client self-serve too, right? And automation, agentic AI. Are you doing anything with OpenClaw, or is it too not secure enough for you guys to play around with agents?
Have played around with OpenClaw. I think it's awesome. We haven't implemented it into our workflow. I think there are, we have to be very careful about any open source code. I will be hopefully publishing something on LinkedIn over the weekend, kind of about our experiments with OpenClaw. Our system has many agentic components. If you think about the process that a human would use when a contract comes in, we really understand what matters in this contract to the lawyer and what's ultimately going to matter to the client. How do we first, design a process that marks up the document, that brings the lawyer into the loop, essentially, ultimately as a tool call, and also brings the client into the loop as a tool call, to ensure that the AI is kind of maximally utilized? Yeah, I think that's kind of the system we have now, and it's also going to be a fully agentic system ultimately, when the human lawyer will eventually be able to do less and less of the work, and it really will be strategic judgment that the human is doing and overseeing and ensuring kind of the quality of the AI's markups.
All right, you gave it to me, so I'm going to use it. So they're doing less and less of the work, JP, but what if they're billing by the hour? Like, what are they? How are they going to make money? So, like, what is your business model that you're using with General Legal?
Yeah, so we charge $500 for the negotiation of a commercial contract. That negotiation could take 10 turns, it could take 2 turns. Our lawyers, we're really hiring top of market attorneys across the board in commercial. Like, I want myself to be the worst commercial attorney at the company. And we onboarded a founding partner yesterday who was the longtime top attorney at Ticketmaster. And these folks will negotiate. We'll jump on a call with you. We'll jump on a call with your counterparty. We'll use our AI to push along the negotiating process, and we'll just do a really great job for you. And it's $500. So we're just as incentivized to get this deal done, to do things smartly and efficiently as you are. We want to protect your risks as a client, but we also, just like you, want the deal to close. And we're going to help you get there. And I mean, I think that's really the role of a commercial attorney.
Let me tell you about the brand new sponsor for Law Subscribed, Paxton. I've been using Paxton as my legal AI tool for over 2 years. I continue to evaluate and demo other legal AI tools in the market and still decide to stick with Paxton because of its reliability, its accuracy, its ease of use, affordability, and they do not lock you into a long-term contract. Now, as a transactional and fractional general counsel attorney, I'm using Paxton for all of my substantive and non-substantive legal work, whether that's legal research, analysis, drafting, or enhancing existing legal work product. In the time it used to take me to draft and analyze legal documents, now, after a little bit of back and forth with Paxton, I have something ready to go in minutes that used to take hours or even days. While I'm no longer a litigator, I could see how valuable Paxton would be when researching a new issue, preparing for a deposition, drafting a motion, or going to trial. So if your firm would benefit from using Paxton as your legal AI tool, then make sure to use the link in the description when signing up to let Paxton know I sent you. That's all about our new sponsor. Now back to the show. I really think there's opportunities when you're not billing by the hour and you're helping with deals like that, where you go from cost center to profit center. I'm going to give you an example, and then I want to know if you could think of any other ones. You have examples from your experience. So, my firm charges on subscription. I'm curious to know if you guys have thought about that or talked that through, because I think there's a sort of a no-brainer. You pay us $3,000 a month, and we'll do whatever contracts for you, right? That come in right at that point. Yeah. But something came in that was potential IP infringement. That was like a cease and desist for one of my clients. But they were in co-opetition with each other, and they were not only in competition, but this potential infringer was also a customer of my client, right? And so they were just taking the images from the website and putting it on theirs after they bought the thing. Well, they can't do that, right? But since I'm not just let's sue them or let's send cease and desist or whatever, because I'm not incentivized to just bill a bunch of hours or take them to court or whatever.
Yeah.
My advice was, let's send them and let's just let them know, hey, you might not have known you weren't able to do this, but here's a license agreement that you could sign
Mhm.
where now I'm creating recurring revenue
Yep.
for the client where maybe,
Yep.
so like I paid for my legal fee for the whole year with that license agreement. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. I mean, so I think that's such a good point. So I think on the subscription point, we don't necessarily see the need to have a monthly subscription because our orientation is what does the client want? How can we save the client from this ridiculous process that they're currently experiencing with a
Mm-hmm.
large, slow, and expensive law firm? And what we found our clients really want, it's a lot, especially our clients are a lot of like young, ambitious founders with fast growing companies, and
Mm-hmm.
they want to come out, ask us to do a contract, know what it's going to cost, and then we deliver the contract. And even the ones that we've maybe done 10 to 15 contracts in a single month, they haven't come knocking on the door saying we want a subscription because they're getting so much value out of, what they're paying a la carte. So, and we understand, I think ARR is it's very cherished, especially as like an indicator of your company's growth. But I think the more important indicator is the satisfaction score that we have from our clients. Like, our clients love us. And I think they love us because they just ping us with a problem and we solve it really quickly for a price that they know. And I don't necessarily see the need to change business models or to change to a subscription model unless the client starts saying, hey, we use you so much. We want you to kind of cut us a deal for a subscription. And maybe in a month where we use you less, we're okay paying that fee. I think right now it's about going out there and really demonstrating that value. And I think the value is more kind of on the a la carte side.
Yeah, well, I do think options for clients is good, right? So like having that option possibly, I think that's a conversation you're going to have at some point in the future, JP, with clients, right? They're going to say, hey, we've used you so much. Like that's going to happen. Now, you guys on LinkedIn anyway, it says how it's only been a few months that like you've been like at least like launched or soft launched or something. So you haven't been around for long enough maybe for clients to ask that question yet,
Mhm.
possibly.
Yeah, yeah, it could be. Listen, I think we're open to listening to clients if they say, yeah, I would be more comfortable with a subscription because we want our expenses to be predictable. I think that's fair. I think the appeal to the one-off model and the reason we haven't had that request yet is just that they don't like law is it comes in waves, like especially so for example, your company might be taking off, might do a Series B, and you're just overwhelmed with MSAs. You do a huge press release, you have a big backer, and suddenly, you have 75 MSAs, you have four AEs, trying to push those MSAs across the line and close their sales agreements, and you're overwhelmed. And you come to us, and we like do a high volume for you for a few months. Then you get your processes under control. Maybe that flow slows down a little bit. As you're just focused on satisfying your own customers. And
Yeah.
that's the nature of legal in general. Even when I was in big law, I noticed that particular practices would surge for like a 6 to 18 month period. Like in 2023, fintech was a really surging practice area. In 2022, crypto was. I imagine now, most of Cooley's work is in the AI space. And so, I think being able to be flexible and not charge in months that we don't do work, I think that's appealing. But yeah, to your point, heck yeah, if folks ask us for a subscription, we're happy to look into that. Yeah.
I mean, you have a few AI tools on hand that you could help come up with some strategies and look at historical data and all that stuff, right? Probably. So I
Yeah,
think I
totally.
think you're better equipped to handle those conversations than traditional law firms that have a bunch of data and don't know how to use it or access it, right?
Totally. Totally.
So so then, okay, so you're venture capital backed though. You raised quite a bit of money for a pre-seed round. Recurring revenue is something that growing companies look at as they raise more money. So there's that part of it too, which you kind of hinted at in the answer to your last question. But then the goal is go public or get acquired.
Mhm.
Generally speaking, like your backers want some kind of exit moment for them where they could cash in, right? So like, what's the plan here, man?
The plan, we are focused on building the largest law
Of
firm in the world.
course.
I think you've already seen examples of like private investors purchasing portions of alternative business structure companies.
Yeah.
We have a slightly different like corporate structure, but I think it's the same principle. You actually also, I think, have at least one example of a private equity firm purchasing a massive stake in a company with our structure. So I think that, the options are not too different than a like medical or a dental MSO. You can, we don't want to sell. We don't think about the exit. We think about, growing. And we really do. Like we are in this for a decade, and we want to just grow to really demonstrate how well legal services can be provided if you don't have the billable hour incentive. But anything is on the table, I think, in terms of long-term exit opportunities. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to distinguish it from, right? Because this is not your typical venture-backed startup. It's just not, right? It's not your only path is get acquired or go public. And I think just that's an important thing to talk about because otherwise people just don't know. So you mentioned MSO, you brought up the unique structure, right? Like, so YC didn't invest in the legal services, law firm, lawyer-owned part, right? Because they can't, right? So like, what does that structure look like? Because you mentioned that there's other people doing it. So it's not like it's a total secret sauce, if you want to share a little bit more.
Totally. Yeah. It's an MSO relationship between a Delaware C Corp and a California law firm. Our lawyers are employed by the law firm. The legal services are provided by lawyers. They are overseen by me and my co-founder, Javed. We're both barred attorneys. Javed is barred in California. I'm barred in DC and Massachusetts. And we oversee the legal work done by our US barred attorneys from the law firm. The C Corp, which, as you say, takes on investment, is a technology company that is providing the technology services. So as we hire engineers, they'll work for the C Corp and they'll provide technology services to the law firm.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, you've said that a couple of times, maybe. I don't know. That seemed pretty succinct.
Yeah, that's the structure. Yeah, so Atrium really pioneered the structure about 8 years ago now. We're big fans of kind of what their mission was. But kind of as I said, I think it was in a time where the technology could maybe add a 10 to 20% margin and not a 90% margin. I think we're in kind of 10x land when it comes to the efficiency that AI can provide to at least corporate attorneys, and I think a lot of areas of litigation as well. Yeah.
Right. Were there ever any conversations of, hey, if all the co-founders are barred attorneys and we start this tech company or we start this law firm that's a tech company, we could just have it be one, it's a law firm, but then we could just invite other lawyers and law firms to be on the cap table, and then it's just a law firm, and then you don't have to have this crazy structure because everyone on the cap table is a lawyer. You get your big firms to invest, right, as the future of legal. So were there any conversations about that?
I listened, like we explored every like kind of corporate structure option. I think that ultimately this one makes sense because there are a lot of investors outside of the legal space who are very interested in the technology of the legal industry. You look at the kind of capitalization of Ligora and Harvey even over the last couple months, the new raises they've announced, I think that kind of demonstrates the appetite for investment in legal services. And so if they're able to invest in this technology firm that is fueling a law firm, and the law firm is providing phenomenal services because it's being fueled by this underlying technology company, I think that they're going to be able to provide significantly more of a boost than if we limited it to just kind of one sector being allowed to invest.
Yeah. So right now your target market, startups, growth stage companies, and outside of that too, but like that's your target, right? That is, I still consider that like institutional law firm clients, right? These are companies that were going to hire lawyers. They're raising dollars so that they could pay for lawyers in some instances, right? 2024 data, because I don't think the 25 data is in yet, says $400 billion was spent on the U.S. legal market. Mm-hmm. All right, but we know that maybe even more, but at least 77% of legal needs go unmet by lawyers. Mm-hmm. So $400 billion represents 23% of the market. Now that's the pie, and that's what you're fighting over. You're coming in and you're disrupting, and you will capture some of that pie without question, I think. Mm-hmm. What about that $1.3 trillion market opportunity? Are you ever going to look outside of just the startup growth stage company space?
Yeah, I think that we absolutely will. We already represent a significant real estate developer in Texas. We are absolutely, like, if you look at most of the contracts in America, they are not done by growth stage technology companies. They're done by everybody else. And if you look inside the general counsel offices at some of these regional kind of closely held private companies that still might do, $100 million to $500 million of revenue, they tend to be fairly sparse with lawyers, overly reliant, in my opinion, on outside counsel. And I actually think these are the companies that are most taken advantage of by outside counsel. So there is absolutely, I think it makes sense to start with startups who are eager to look at new technology and AI-driven solutions for their problems. Like these are folks that sign up in a minute, with our streamlined, engagement letter process. They are on our Slack. They are sending us a contract 5 minutes later. You might not get that right with a closely held regional construction company, but those are the guys. And we had a lot of interviews before we started this company with folks in those spaces. And I mean, like some of the most egregious ones were like a couple edits to a land purchase agreement. That was a big land purchase agreement. It was like $15 million of land, cost $5,500. I mean, we're talking about 2 edits in a contract that were fairly non-substantive. A company, another in this category, in the $100 million plus regional business, that was paying $4,000 for a form demand letter to be sent to non-paying contractors. $4,000 for a form letter. Like, you want to talk about who's being taken advantage of in corporate legal services in America? Like, you got to start there. And yeah, I mean, we're going to be hitting the road going after these non-technical markets. We already are, and I think there's no reason to stay focused on startups.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's data on this, but I wouldn't be surprised if 99% of the contracts that are executed between parties in the U.S., there's not a lawyer involved.
Mm-hmm.
Because like the vast majority of like smaller deals are just not going to see a lawyer there too.
Oh yeah.
So I think there's huge market opportunity. I'm really not worried about the competition. But here's another thing. As a solo practice, AI-powered, tech-powered, automated law firm, as much as I can be without being technical, all off-the-shelf tools for me, JP.
Mm-hmm.
Finding a solution sometimes like a 650, which has been a long-time supporter of the show, right? Like they're almost like my HR, legal docs, automated back office that I pay the subscription for, and it's like subscription arbitrage so that like I could advise my clients on it without them having to necessarily pay for 650, but they wouldn't have to because they don't have as high a volume, right? Because I'm like way down market, smaller businesses, generally speaking, right? I have exceptions to my ICP too. But like, have you considered like, hey, you're building something pretty cool here. What about the solos of me in the markets that are so small you're not even going to serve? I know you said you're not competing with legal tech, JP, and maybe you're not today. But I'm just saying, as a practitioner, the $500 a month thing, even if it's just pass through for my smaller clients, right, and I'm still their fractional GC on subscription, might be a product opportunity there for smaller firms that want to take advantage of the technology.
I mean, I think that we have a role to play in partnering with firms of all sizes because first of all, there are things that you're asked to do and you're like, that's not worth my time. Right? Like I am like a strategic advisor. I don't, I can send this silly MSA out the door. It gets done in a couple hours for my client. My client is well served and happy for the referral. And yeah, there's no reason not to be a channel partner as well and actually integrate directly into the services of other firms as long as, conflicts are always cleared and checked and, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, because my mindset is, because I'm thinking now that I have a legal tech company, I'm like, I have to hire. I need to outsource. I need to get out of being a solo practice attorney. So I'm like, okay, I have to teach and train them how to use the AI tools at my firm so that they could very fast, get all the things done at a higher quality, right? Mm-hmm. And that human in the loop and that back and forth time is compressed from giving it to an associate. They go manually do the work. They bring it back, I review it. They could just do that with the AI and then I could do it. Mm-hmm. But if I could just pay $500 per contract, or if my client pay $500 per contract, it's like, do I need to pay a person? Yep. Can I just use that? That sounds a lot better than me hiring another human to do the stuff with the AI very fast, the way that I'm doing it, right? Mm-hmm. And there will be maybe a combination of that, right? Could be the solution. So I'm just saying, look, potential customer, Subscription Attorney LLC, my firm is a potential customer. If you ever pivot and start offering that product, JP, that's all I'm saying.
All right, that sounds great. You'll be the first call if we do.
Okay, all right, let me know. But with that in mind, who are your ideal clients? And if any of them are watching, by the way, legal tech startup founders watch this podcast. And so they could potentially be customers of yours. You're not, you could be their law firm, possibly, right? That helps them with higher volume as they grow and grow. So, give us the sales pitch. I'm letting you. You have an opportunity to do the sales pitch here on Law Subscribe, JP. Go for it.
So our initial customer profile is, hey, you have an MSA, you have a sales agreement, like well done, right? That means things are going well with your company. Do not let your lawyer slow down your deal. You can sign up with us on our website. In one click, you have engaged us and you'll be added to our Slack. In 1 hour, you will receive a markup back on the deal, on the MSA that you want to turn. Yeah, we average an hour. We guarantee 3 hours. You'll get that across to the counterparty. And maybe by the end of the day, the counterparty, as long as their lawyer isn't slow, will sign that deal and you are ready to go. We'll look out for your risk, but we will push your MSA, your DPA, your SaaS agreement, your vendor agreement, your channel partnership agreement. Your pilot agreement, right? As is the case with many of the early YC companies, we will push that forward at lightning speed. You will be represented by the best lawyers in the world who are using AI, not just AI, and you'll get that deal over the finish line. And that's why our clients love us. We've never lost a client. And as of I think 2 weeks ago, there was not a single client who had closed a deal who hadn't come back, for at least one more contract because they like this service. We are what we say we are.
Yeah. All right, then. Final question is, how many more years, months, maybe, exponential growth curve and all that, does the billable hour have to be the dominant business model for legal services?
I believe, in my opinion, the billable hour will die a very slow death. And I think it is because of the corporate structure and the business model of law firms by which the vast majority of the profits of a law firm are taken off the table at the end of the year. They pay taxes and then they pay mortgages and car payments and all of the other things, right, that are not investing in the efficiency of the law firm such that you can easily switch over in a profitable sense to a fixed fee model. So I believe it will exist for a long time. It will shrink and it will die. I think it won't be the dominant model. It's got I would say maybe 3 to 5 years of being the dominant model. It can't be the dominant model in the long term, but I think there will be very, very stubborn resistance to the transition given the corporate structure of the law firms.
And no one said it's not profitable, right? Like, it's not like it's not profitable. It's just, it just can't survive in this era. And wow, after hearing you say all that, to say 3 to 5 years for not dominant, I was surprised. But I tend to agree with you. In my episode that aired today, that was a former LinkedIn Live, I think the title of it is something like The Billable Hour Won't Survive 5 Years. And that was with Ted from InfoDash. I don't know if you know InfoDash, but like that's his prediction as well. So I think we're all sort of coalescing around this 5-year time frame of billable hour not being the dominant model. We'll see what happens. We'll see. But with that, if anybody wanted to follow up, reach out, find your law firm, how do they do that?
Our website is general.legal. And again, you click the Get Started button and we will have engaged you as a law firm in 10 seconds. You'll be on our Slack or email if you prefer, and we'll start turning your contract. So just go to general.legal. So no .com.
All right. Well, stick around for a few minutes or just, to wrap up here. But I'll thank you for coming on the podcast. JP Mohler, again, thanks for coming on Law Subscribed Live.
Matthew, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
All right. So if you're not already, if you're in my network, you haven't seen JP yet, follow him on LinkedIn, click the bell, click all. Like he said, he's got some interesting posts coming up in the near future that he's planning out. So you're going to want to see those. If you're in JP's network, you're finding me for the first time, follow me, click the bell, click all to see all my posts about the end of the billable hour and how to adopt AI as a law firm. And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in. Make someone's day by sharing this episode with them. Remember to sign up for your free account at Practi.ai to trade billing time for recurring revenue. Until next time, this is Matthew Kurbis with Law Subscribed.